Welcome folks, today I am back with my biggest hub comparison yet. I've done two in the past, back in like 2017 and 2020, looking at USB-C hubs for your different laptops and that kind of thing. In my latest one, I also included Thunderbolt 3 options in there. Now Thunderbolt 4 is out on a lot of different PCs and desktops, as well as the new Macs. So I wanted to include some Thunderbolt 4 options in the mix, comparing small, simple, inexpensive ones through to giant ones that have over a dozen different ports, depending on the kind of needs that you want. Now, before we jump into this, I have to say there is a big variety. For example, I might say that this one is better than this one, but you really need to think about specifically what ports do you need. Do you need it to be able to have its own HDMI or display port, or will using a dongle into it to give you a HDMI work? Do you really want it to have an SD card reader, or does your computer already have one? If you go on over to the link that's in the description below, I'm going to give you all of my test results, as well as links to the exact models, because some of these brands have 5, 6, 7 different models with slightly different port configurations, and I can't guarantee that they're all going to give you the same speed. Now, just a really quick primer, if you want to see more detail on the difference in the different USB and Thunderbolt protocols, check out my previous video. I'll have a card above for that. But when we're talking speed, you have to make sure that one, whatever it is that you're trying to get data on and off, is fast enough. And then it comes down to, if you're using a hub, is the cable the right one? Is the hub the right one? And is your computer's port the right one? So for example, inside USB-C, USB-C is just the connection type. It could have USB 2, 2.1, 3, 3.2, or it could be a Thunderbolt 3 or even a Thunderbolt 4. But for example, if you're using an old-fashioned spinning drive and using, let's say, Thunderbolt 3, the drive won't be fast enough to give you what the protocol is capable of. If you have a Thunderbolt 3 actual drive, but then the cable you're using is only USB-C, you won't get Thunderbolt 3 speed. If you're using a Thunderbolt 3 drive and cable, but the port you plug it into on your computer is only USB-C, not actually Thunderbolt 3 or 4, you won't get the speeds as well. So you need everything in the chain to be up to spec. Now, to do this comparison, I wanted to make sure that I'm not making a bottleneck by using slow drives. So things like spinning disks, I didn't even test them. To figure out my tests, I used a bunch of different drives and cards to figure out what was going to separate out the different speeds in the devices. You'll quickly realize that, say, some devices might be giving you true speed on a couple of their ports, but not all of them. Or some may be giving you great Thunderbolt or USB-C connectivity, but the SD card is a slow type of reader. In the end, I eliminated a bunch of drives, including the Samsung T7s that I know a lot of people are using, because I just wanted to go with the fastest. So we have a SanDisk Extreme Pro. This is the fastest one that they currently offer. That is a 4 terabyte unit. Again, all of these I'll have links below. I also have just a small capacity 1 terabyte pluggable. This has an NVMe SSD inside, and it's a true Thunderbolt 3. I own several of both of these, and for the different protocols, they're right up there with the fastest you can get. And then a top speed Sony SD card. This is 300 read, 299 write, and that is going to give us a good cross section of testing. To set the scene, I'm using the latest generation MacBook Pro. It is an M1 chip, and there are actually some surprising results here, including one of the hubs saying it's not compatible with my computer, but winning the tests. Quite strange. Now, I'll give links to the computer as well below. Now, let's just set a benchmark using the drive straight to the computer, not via a hub, to set a benchmark. The different tests I ran. First was using the SanDisk Extreme Pro, using the Blackmagic speed test to see how fast it could read and write. I let it run 5 or 6 times, see what the top performing run is. It got 910 and 921. Great result. Then using the pluggable Blackmagic speed test again, it got 1839 and 2500. That's pretty incredible read and write speed. Next up, I copied 30.5 gigabytes of files from the SanDisk to the pluggable via the computer and timed it using just these straight into the computer, and that was using the SanDisk using a USB C-to-C cable. And I should note, in all cases, I use the cable that actually comes with the drives and hubs, so you're getting, you know, what the manufacturer intended. That took 32.3 seconds, and then the final test I did was copying from the SD card to the hard drive, or to the SSD in my computer, and using the internal UHS 2 card reader that the MacBook Pro has. That took 27.5 seconds. So that is our benchmark that, not introducing the variable of a hub, we were able to get. And I should say, for all of this, on the devices that are capable of it, I was also exporting or running a 4K display separate to mine. So when I did those tests, I was just using the computer's own HDMI out cable to run a big TV like the one behind me. So that sets the scene. Now we can pretty clearly draw a line between the types of devices we have here, between simple, limited number of ports and kind of portable, and then the ones that advertise themselves as being Thunderbolt 4. Now, quick thing on Thunderbolt 3 versus Thunderbolt 4. In the past, going from Thunderbolt 2 to 3, and you know, each of the different iterations as we go up, the maximum theoretical speed was doubling. That's actually not the case with 3 to 4. They both have a maximum of 40 gigabits per second, but to be certified as Thunderbolt 4, they have to be able to do more things at the same time. So it has to be able to support an 8K monitor or dual 4K monitors, as well as getting certain speeds on different protocols, whereas Thunderbolt 3 only had to support one monitor, not the dual monitors. Something to point out, all of these hubs require external power, and some of them, especially the smaller ones where the hub itself is tiny, the power brick is way bigger and heavier than it. And if you're not using a power brick, you're not going to get these results. So keep that in mind. These are kind of portable, use them anywhere, take them on the road. These are more likely to be at your desk when you're all plugged in. You bring the laptop back, you plug this one in, and then you get more ports, but you need that extra power brick. So let's take a look at the smaller ones. Now, basically, I think you can say you get what you pay for here. And if you're buying the cheapest one that you can find on Amazon, you can expect it to be garbage. Some of these had just shockingly bad results. I don't think they're even a UHS 1 reader in there in terms of SD. I think it must be just, I don't know, something older and crappier than that. Taking a look at this one, the ZQUOO, it's like if you just mashed your hand on the keyboard to see what name came up. I don't even need to give you all of the results. They'll all be in the document, but basically, whereas copying the card directly into the computer took 20 and 27.5 seconds, this took almost 6 minutes into the trash. Next up, the MCY. This one actually looks pretty cool, I think. In terms of read and write, the SanDisk, now all of these weren't able to use the pluggable because it's Thunderbolt 3 and these aren't powered. And all of them couldn't use the SanDisk except for one, the charge-in. All the rest couldn't use the SanDisk using USB-C to C, so I had to use the included C to A cable and run it through that. So the MCY got 402 and 384, so that's like half of the capability if I were doing it straight into the computer, and it took 1:20 to do the SD card, so that's like triple as long. Into the trash. The pluggable also wouldn't work with its own drive, but again, that's just to do with protocols. No shade on the drive, on these guys for not being able to do that. It's a Thunderbolt 3 unit. These really aren't meant for that kind of purpose. The pluggable got 401 and 382, so actually about the same as the MCY. And whereas the MCY took 1:20 to do the card, this took 4:52. Also into the trash. The one exception to you get what you pay for is the Sabrent. This actually did really well on using the USB-A for the SanDisk. It got 867 and 907. Now that's actually up there and better than some of these were able to get using the USB-C. So well done, Sabrent, on that. This one's also extremely inexpensive. But the card reader still took 3:50 in the trash. Now, ChargeN, like all of these, I have no relationship directly with the company, but ChargeN basically won the travel segment of the last 2 reviews I did, and they've done it again with this latest one. It is their highest priced and their top spec one, so you would expect that. But this is the one I personally use. I've had it for like 6 months before organizing to do this test, and it absolutely smokes everything else in the competition. There's just no comparison to those ones. So for the SanDisk, using, again, but actually this was able to do the USB-C, it got 913 and 888. So almost as fast, and actually on the right, it got faster than I was getting directly into the Mac. It also couldn't do the pluggable, so I couldn't do the copy across, but using its built-in SD card reader, I was getting 27.8, only 0.3 of a second slower than going straight into the computer. This also has Ethernet, it also has HDMI, so I was able to run out on that. If you want something that is transportable and doesn't need external power, this is absolutely the best one on the market. I say that with no bias, no affiliation with the company. This is the one that you want to get. But again, they make loads of different ones. So head on over to learn.mattgranger.com. There's a link below. You can download the PDF that has all of the test results, and you can see this one. Otherwise, there'll be a link specifically to the device below. Winner, winner, chicken dinner, travel unit, the ChargeN. Now we move up to the big boys. Now, as I said, you have to think about what's the port configuration that you specifically want for your work. For example, some of these little ones could be just what you want. 3 Thunderbolts on the back, power on the front, you've got 4 USB-As, and then you've got your point to connect it to your computer. Nice and compact. Just keep in mind the power brick is much bigger. If you go to something like the ThinkPad, the Lenovo, you've got your USB-A, then it also has headphone. It's also got a Kensington lock. Then on the back, it just blows it apart. You've got a proprietary power, display port, HDMI, another display port, a couple of USB-As, another one, a Thunderbolt, LAN, just a huge number of different options. And actually, I have to say, it's not a linear, you get more for what you pay in this comparison. There are some here that are just overpriced and don't give you value, and others that are offering amazing value. So let's dive in and go through them one by one. Now, in terms of the big ones, there was some big variation. Now, you would expect that these are all going to have all of the ports, but it's just not the case. Some of the bigger ones don't have an SD card. Some don't even have a HDMI. Especially, we can kind of divide the big ones now into big and little big. There's 4 that stand out as being really petite, that still require external power, and then we've got 6 giant ones. So let's judge them separately as well, because they are kind of in different price points again. First up, let's have a look at the pluggable USB 4. Now, it's kind of hard to compare them to figure out which one's which. They look similar, they have similar ports on them, but this is the USB. This one is coming in currently, as I record, at $189. For the Blackmagic test on the SanDisk, it was getting 808 and 823. On the pluggable, 1163, 2480. Copying the SanDisk to the pluggable, it was taking 36.2, and then it doesn't have an SD card reader, so we couldn't test that. Now, you'll note, none of these little ones have an HDMI, But to be Thunderbolt 4, they need to be able to support dual 4K monitors. So the pluggables actually came with a USB-C to HDMI adapter. So on all these ones that didn't have a HDMI, I still ran a 4K display on them whilst doing these tests, so that there was, multiple things going on at once. Whilst this one, it's not bad, it's probably the weakest performer of the bunch. It's not the cheapest. Goodbye. Next up, the Cal Digit. Now, I'm kind of torn on this one because it actually got exceptional read-write speeds for the pluggable. It got 805 and 820 for the SanDisk, 1192 and 2499 as fast as any of these for the pluggable. The copy was 36.2, so it's kind of right up there, but this is $250, so significantly more expensive than the others, and it doesn't really offer any advantage. Also, the power brick is quite gigantic. I'm gonna leave the last two in here both. I have a winner, but it's going to depend on what you want. The Sonnet Tech, you can see, has power, a power switch, 3 Thunderbolts, then it has a single at the front, then one intended for a monitor on the front. This one is getting 806 and 821 with the SanDisk, 1170 and 2495 with the pluggable, the same exact 36.2 for the copy, also no SD card, but it's $199. So you're basically getting almost identical performance to the Cal Digit, but for 25% less. So that deserves to stay on the table. Then the other pluggable, this is the Thunderbolt 4 version rather than the USB 4 version. This is actually the cheapest in the mix and with some of the best performance. It's getting 813 and 826 with the SanDisk, best of these little bigs. Then 1404, 2495 for read and write with the pluggable. By far the best, 35.6 for the copy, also the best. And it's the cheapest. Isn't it nice when actually the best is also the cheapest? Doesn't happen often. But again, there's so many different variables. So make sure I'll put the direct links to my top choices in the caption so there's no confusion. So these are our recommended buys so far. Now, before we jump in and take a look at these big units, folks, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. I know about 2/3 of my viewers aren't. I'm trying to put out fun and useful photography, tech, and travel videos a couple of times a week. We'd love to have you as part of the community. Now we step up to the big bigs, and I have to say I'm a little bit, the biggest surprises were in this section and the biggest variety of port options, so you really need to dig in and see which one's going to meet your needs. Let's again go from weakest to best. Having just given pluggable the top prize, this would be the most disappointing unit I tested of any of the categories. Maybe I got a lemon, but I have to say this one in my hands is trash, especially because they kind of advertise it as being a plug and play, ready to go, easy to use type thing. It's with the dual display setup. It was so unreliable. It froze my system twice. It kept dropping drives when I was copying things. That's a great way to end up losing your original and your copy of data. I just can't recommend this one. It's $250, so it's actually the cheapest of the ones here on the table, but with good reason. You can check the test results if you want, but I don't think it's even worth discussing it. Don't buy that one. Get its little brother for cheaper. Next up, the Kensington. Nice design, nice overall port options in my opinion. Doesn't have a HDMI out, however. This one was getting 810 and 824 on the SanDisk, 1180 and 2490 on the pluggable, 37.6 on the copy, and 27.8 on the SD card. So to be honest, slower except for the SD than this little guy. And this is, depending where you find it, $300 to $350. Can't justify that. There's better options. Next up, the Lenovo ThinkPad option. Now, Dell, Lenovo come in similar kind of packaging. Both of these came, maybe just the buyer I got it from, but came with extra cables and stuff. Have to say, It's got a wide array of ports. It's obviously aimed at the business user with all of the different display options, but then no SD card reader. This one was getting 812 and 816, 1205 and 2499, 37 seconds for the copy, no SD reader. And this is the most expensive in the bunch, $355. It's not nearly as sturdy as the Dell. The performance wasn't outstanding. If you need this port arrangement, then it's a great option. I'm kind of tempted to throw it in the trash being expensive, but not that fast. But if you really want all of those external display options, this could be a great option for you. So I'll put it back here as a kind of next to the trash, but not in the trash. It depends on your needs kind of a setup, okay? Next up is the Sonnet Tech 11. Now, I don't know why, I guess just a QC issue, but this one came with a big piece of foam stuck to the top, so I've just left it like that. It got 812 and 817, 1160 and 2497, 36.2 on the copy, and 27.8 on the SD copy, so a good overall performance. $319 as we write right now. It's really not a bad performance, but there are two at right around the same price point. These two, obviously, that are doing even better, that I think have better options, that I think this one doesn't really get in. It's got nothing that really jumps out as being unique about it, so sorry. You've still got a Sonnet Tech on the desk. The last two, and let's go with the Dell first. One unique thing about this one, the Thunderbolt 3 cable is built into it. It kind of looks like a power brick with the cable there, but I like that. You want to have a really quality cable, and you know, why be plugging it in and out? To get the best results, you need to be using the right cable. Having it hardwired in can only be a good thing, and it is the chonkiest, nicest quality Thunderbolt cable I have ever seen, so tick to Dell. It's also, despite being a plastic rather than a metal design, really, really nicely built. It's got great port configuration. It's got similar kind of options to the Lenovo. You know what? It does go in the trash because this ticks the same boxes. It's cheaper and it's faster. This one got 822 and 825, 1422 and 2498, 35.4 for the copy, so the fastest of the copies. It doesn't, however, have the SD card reader, so think about if you're going to need that. But this is a class option. It also has the Kensington lock and all of that, and it really does feel beautifully built. If you're a industrial, heavy user, you'll know Dell makes some serious workstations. For consumers, they're often thought of as cheap and disposable, but Dell are a titan of the industry, so I really think that is a great option. And then one that surprised me, because so often flashy, nicely designed tech doesn't perform the best, is this Anchor unit. Now, it has a great array of port configurations. It's got SD, it's got Ethernet, it's got dual HDMI, it's got a bunch of different port options. You can get it with an optional stand that looks kind of neat, so you can put it up, vertically if you prefer that. In terms of speed for the S for the SanDisk, it was the fastest at 829 and 826 for the pluggable. A little bit slower than the Dell actually at 1280 and 2485. The copy was also slightly slower than all of the other big units at 38.3, about 5% slower. It does, however, have the SD card. It is got 28.2, so it's actually, again, slightly slower, like 0.4 of a second. But this is $330, beautiful design. If you're using a Mac, having it fit in with all of the other overpriced, shiny aluminum objects on your desk may be a priority. Good port configuration and excellent performance for all of the copy stuff. But here's the interesting thing. The Anchor, whilst it looks great, it's performing great in my test, technically, according to their own website, it's not compatible with the M1 Max. Now, I couldn't find on their site exactly what they mean by incompatible, because obviously it's working and working well. I think it's that it won't support the maximum display setup, having multiple super high-res screens. But in my test, having one 4K monitor and then the different devices was all working fine. So it's going to be up to you if that's worth it for you and what different configurations you have, and of course, what machine you're going to be running it off. So for me, these two are two fantastic options. The pluggable and the Sonnet Tech are two great options if you want limited number of ports, and then if you want in-office, the Chargen is simply the way to go. But let's just recap that this guy still has similar kind of copy results and SD results as these ones that are 4 times the price, and it's just so small and basic, and you don't need external power with it. I think you have to applaud the engineering that's gone into this, and it explains why this is like $80 odd, whereas some of the others were $15 and $20, because this actually has the level of build design and engineering in it that these guys do as well. As I said, I'll have links to these, my top choices, and the devices and cards and stuff that I used directly in the caption below if you want to see the full testing and the links to all of the different products that I tested. Then head on over to learn.mattgranger.com. That's my website where I teach photography and all things about how to get the most out of your equipment. You can create a free account instantly and get access to that PDF to download it. If you have any questions, please let me know. And if there's another one of these kind of comparisons you'd like to see, please also let me know. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. I know these videos get a lot of views, and it would be nice to have you in the team. About 2/3 of my viewers typically aren't. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was useful. Buy something that will meet your needs. And I'll see you soon.